Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. So for the first time we have the good news in the Kursk region. For the last few days Russia gained more territories, but today Ukraine performed a counterattack and successfully got even the part of the local village under control, causing the Russians severe losses. So definitely the capable Ukrainian brigades work well, like 47th Brigade, which was deployed in the Kursk region. They have the state-of-art equipment and they have one of the best trainings among Ukrainian soldiers. So it was the first move of the Ukrainian counterstrike in the direction of Kornevo. Actually, Ukrainian army was in the outskirts of the Kornevo town. He was the front line before, but Russia managed to gather lots of the forces and now they're taking the advantage over Ukraine, but there could be some of the surprises, as you can see, for the advancing Russian troops. Well, I think that the next move for Ukrainian side will be taking this road under control. At least we see that it's kind of the tactical, logical decision to attack the Russian group over here from both of the sides. And just look at those vast gray areas. Yes, those are shown in amber, but actually those are the gray areas, so we are not sure who is present over here, who is controlling those territories. Kursk region is probably one of those rare cases where the maneuverable war is still possible, without huge minefields, defense lines, so Russians tried actually to push Ukraine really hard, but instead Ukraine repelled the Russian attack and now counterattacking. So everything is changing very rapidly in the Kursk region, but the trend still lies in favor, unfortunately, of the Russian forces, because simply they have more resources even in this region. Yeah guys, sorry, YouTube is not okay with showing the guns, so I have to put my own censorship. Well, anyways, those are the Russian soldiers of 155th Brigade. They are now placed in the Kursk region, and before they did lots of the war crimes. Like there was the video published around 3 weeks ago of how they zeroed Ukrainian prisoners of war, people who surrendered to Russian soldiers, but they didn't care. Well, today our drone operators finished them all. For the obvious reason, I cannot show you this drone video, but it will be published on my Telegram channel. You may check it out in the video description just below. What can I say? That the revenge is imminent and our guys are just awesome hunting those bastards. And according to the latest information from the NOAF reports, definitely Ukraine counterattacked and trapped the Russian group near Zelony Shlach village in the Kursk region. Awesome operation conducted by Ukrainian 47th and I think 82nd Brigade deployed in the place. Awesome job guys, you are fantastic. So if Ukraine takes this crossroad again, it will reinforce the Ukrainian logistics and Ukraine may regain some of the territories. I hope that Ukraine is still capable to take the initiative in the Kursk region, because without it, this operation would just fade away. You know guys, we even have the image of the Ukrainian attack in the Kursk region. Sorry guys, I cannot share this video on this platform. As usual, it is available on my Telegram. What can I say? That definitely Ukrainian strike was successful. What do we know? That Ukraine also had losses during this attack. One of the T-64 tank was significantly damaged, but the crew is fine. And yes, Ukraine is using lots of the FPV drones and other drones to hit lots of the Russian equipment. For example, after the first hit, this vehicle was left by the Russian crew, and to finish it, many of the other FPV drones are used because Russia may evacuate the vehicle from the front lines to fight on it again and again. My friends, if you like the job that I do here on the YouTube channel, you may also consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link for my Patreon page right in the video description just below. Thank you so much for supporting my job and maintaining my motivation. You are awesome. About the North Korean soldiers which are now based in the Russian training camps, we have the information from the Ukrainian intelligence and also from the South Korean intelligence that Russia is going to send them to fight on the Russian territory against the Ukrainian forces in Kursk. According to Davydov, the chief of the military intelligence of Ukraine, 2,600 soldiers, the first batch, will be sent to fight in the Kursk Oblast tomorrow. And by the way, this video reveals the North Korean soldiers who are located in a training camp on the territory of the Russian Federation. It was filmed by one of the locals, and he commented that those are the North Koreans and those are the brave warriors. He even showed this facility. I'm sure it will be geolocated, and it was already geolocated. It is located not far away from North Korea, but on the territory of Russia. Meanwhile, Kim Yo-jong, the sister of the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, said that Ukraine is ill-mannered dog raised by the United States. She criticized both America and Ukraine for their behavior and rhetoric regarding nuclear power, suggesting they have the similarities in their actions and they require the prompt response from the North Korean dictatorship, I may say. Meanwhile, the Newsweek, yes, it's not a reliable source, but nevertheless they shared the information that even North Korean pilots may participate in the war in Ukraine, but I guess that Russia, after all, has for now enough pilots. Judging on the number of the aircraft they use right now, they don't need the new pilots for their jets, but they need new pilots for the helicopters. Because the losses in helicopters, especially Russian K-52 attack helicopters, are pretty much catastrophic for Russia if you speak about that particular tool which Russia uses against Ukrainian vehicles, tanks and sometimes even infantry. As experts say, Russia lost more than 60% of their fleet of K-52 aircraft, so helicopters. We have this information from the South Korean websites. Let me translate it to English. So North Korean pilots also training in Russia, but it doesn't mean actually that they will be sent to fight against the Ukrainian army. Well, this source also says that South Korea now considers to send to Ukraine lots of the weaponry which could be used for offensive operations against the Russian or North Korean forces. Plus, South Korea is looking even for the possible scenario to send their own forces to deploy them to Ukraine. Yet just a limited number of the troops definitely needed to maintain the Korean weaponry, which could be used by Ukraine. Who would have thought even a few months ago that the future Korean War will happen not in Korean Peninsula but in Europe, in Ukraine. Now let's continue with interesting news which happened this night on the territory of the Russian Federation. There were 3 of the cities with alcohol factories which were kaboomed by Ukrainian drones. Yeah, this time Ukraine really hit the decision-making centers on the territory of the Russian Federation. Without alcohol factories, someone will suffer. Well, why those factories are important, really? Because they produce ethanol, which in its turn is widely used in military, especially in aviation. Also, it is mixed with oil components to produce the special type of the fuel. Probably you heard about the ethanol benzene on the gas stations. In Ukraine we have it, and also I guess in Europe. I wonder about the United States. Ethanol is also used in medicine to produce plastic, and many spheres depends on alcohol, really. Yeah, this guy also depends, as many of the Russians depend on vodka. And losing 3 of the factories per single night, well, it's a severe hit for that industry. Here is one more video, so the factory is quite big. The good thing that Ukraine continued those kind of the strikes almost every night. There are many of the drones on the Russian territory hit something, or as Russians say, the debris of the drones went into the factory, the debris of the drones went to the military facility, but our air defense shut down everything. Yes, their usual fairy tale. Oh, you know, guys, there is the significant diplomatic achievement of the Russian Federation and Putin's regime, a BRICS summit. It is happening in Kazan, the occupied territory of Tatarstan, which is now the part of the Russian Federation. And you see this achievement of the Russian side. Antonio Guterres, long time no see, visited that summit. Or plans to visit. I just took this photo from the internet. But he is there or will be there for sure. And he ignored the peace summit on Ukraine, which happened in Switzerland, but at the same time he visits not a neutral meeting of BRICS countries in Russia. I think that Ukraine should take the example of Israel and totally ban this person non grata in Ukraine. But you know what? There are many leaders who refuse to go to Russia for this summit, like for example the Saudi prince. Or for example a Brazilian president who slept in the bathroom and hit his head, so doctors told him that it's better to avoid long journeys. It's like the kid would say in a school, the dog ate my homework. So Putin is not going to Brazil and Brazilian president is not going to Putin. Also, the Serbian president Vučić refused to go to Russia even though he obtained the invitation. Well, probably the only definitely big achievement for Russia that Chinese president with his Chinese delegation visited Russia for the BRICS summit. But you know, after all, it's the Chinese project, I mean this BRICS. China is the main investor and they want to create some sort of the group, the coalition of the countries to oppose them against the Western democracies. Yes, for now it's the economical alliance with the strange regulations, but in the future it could be some sort like the European Union. That's what experts say, but I don't believe in that because those countries, they are not the friends. They are not as united as European countries. They don't have the common history. They don't have the common culture. What can you say about the coalition of India and China, countries who are questioning their borders, who are questioning their territories? This idea will not be developed because they are too different. Right, and now we have to talk about the situation on the Ukrainian front lines. There, unfortunately, Russia still has the initiative, and let's go to the Pokrovsk direction to Selidova town, because there Russians moved quite a lot. Yeah, the deep state military map shows just a light increasement of the gray zone, but I know and everybody knows in the place that Russians advanced quite a lot into the Selidova town, and they are going from the south in attempt to cut this road for Ukrainian supplies. So they want Ukraine to leave this part or even being blocked over here, because if Russians propel and hit this bridge and they hit this road, it might create a very bad picture for Ukrainian army in Selidova. And yes, they also push from the northern side, so simultaneously from 3 of the directions. So Russians published this kind of the picture. It's more or less correct, by the way. So we have the report that definitely Russians went over here to the western outskirts of the settlement. So it is the main threat, I would say, for Selidova. MyCo73 analytic also says that it is happening, so Russians move into the town. But here we see that there is no Russian army advancement, but I checked out the information coming from our offices that Russians went into the settlement and occupied almost half of it. And also they were spotted in the western outskirts. If we go from Selidova a little to the south to Kurahovo direction, you'll see how Russia is expanding its bridgehead. So it was yesterday and it is today. Russian army propelled taking those kind of the small buildings, private households. So we're just a couple weeks away from the time that Russia would create the significant bridgehead in this part, and from it they may attack Kurahovo or they may advance northbound, trying to encircle all of those settlements, and there Ukraine has hundreds of the troops, soldiers who are now serving, defending the ground. But my prediction that Ukraine finally will have to withdraw from this area as well, because it's now claved, as you may see, from many of the directions. And from this area more to the south, Vodine, Vuhledar, all of those settlements were recently occupied by the Russian Federation, and they continue to push forward because there are no any settlements on the way. For example, those fields, so it was yesterday, it is today. Russia advances using their advantage in troops, in army men, and so on. But the picture in general is not that bright for the Russian army, because after all, with those heavy losses, they cannot assault with the same pace forever. No, they will have to announce a new mobilization, at least a new massive mobilization. But the next year, I think that Russia will have to announce it because they're running out of the military men. There was also the assault of the Russian forces in the tourist direction. They used the simple vehicles, maybe light armored vehicles, to advance in the city, but they were stopped by Ukrainian defenders. Sorry guys, I cannot show you all of the details, but the assault of the Russian army turned out to be a total fiasco. The tourist town still holds, even though Russia presses it a lot. As for the losses for the last few days, still Russia loses more of the vehicles compared to Ukrainian army. The ratio of the losses is 2.3 to 1. Yes, it is not as it was in Bakhmut or Avdiivka, then Russians had the losses 5 to 1. Well, in general, Ukraine loses lots of the supply of vehicles. There in statistics, if we speak about 1 to 5 losses, they are like that. If we speak about the tanks or the armored vehicles like BMPs, BTRs, and so on. For example, if we take just BTRs, for the last 10 days, Russia lost 80 of them and Ukraine just 15. But Ukraine loses lots of the MRAPs compared to the Russian army. Small armored vehicles like Max Pro, well, simply because Russians do not have those kind of the vehicles. They have Tiger probably and some sort of the Akhmat armored vehicle, but they rarely use those on the front lines nowadays because they lost most of them. And also the recent statistic confirmed that Ukraine lost one of the Patriot launcher. I don't know whether it's severe damaged or completely lost, but it is in the statistics. Well, again, we may say that Russia loses a lot, but they have enormous resources compared to Ukraine. Like at least 4 times more population compared to Ukraine. They have military production, and their allies really help them a lot. Like, for example, North Korea with artillery shells. Now we see that they won't even deploy their soldiers. And those kind of the big wars are all about resources, so Ukraine absolutely needs more of them today or even yesterday. And we see how Russia is losing their equipment, they're depleting their storages, and soon there will be nothing left. It is said not just by Ukrainians, but also by the Russian Z military bloggers. Russia is just not capable to compensate their losses with their new productions. You know, I checked out some of the Russian websites, and definitely relatives are looking for the lost soldiers. And they're mostly complaining about the Luhansk self-proclaimed republic. So Russia sends their soldiers to fight for the Luhansk Republic, and Luhansk Republic is using them for the mid-waves even stronger than in the Russian army. And the military authorities or commanders of that self-proclaimed republic do not write anything about the losses. They do not respond on the phone calls, nothing. So those guys are completely lost, mostly, yes, in Luhansk region. Well, I'm speaking not just about those 9 people, there are hundreds of those. I just don't want to publish all of that personal information, you know, but I found lots of the photos. So again, the losses for the Russian army are just tremendous. But Ukraine also has losses. The fact that Ukraine is still holding is only because of the precise and advanced Western-made weaponry. Plus, obviously, because of the motivation of the Ukrainian soldiers. Yes, it dropped this year, but in general it still holds to protect the ground against occupiers. And now, my friends, please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. And as usual, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.